Hello everybody, here we are today kicking off our playoff previews with a matchup between the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders. Now, before we start with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So of course we have to start off with how these two teams got here. The Carolina Hurricanes were able to put together another very good season where they finished second in the Metropolitan Division. They were close with the New York Rangers, were nearly there to possibly win the division, but they finished in second with 111 points and were able to battle back after their first 30 games were kind of streaky. They had 27 points in those first 30 games and looked like they might be a wildcard team at best, but were not in that spot after that, being one of hockey's best teams. As for the Islanders, things weren't exactly perfect, but they played really good hockey down the backstretch of the season. They lost their head coach, brought another one in. Guess what? They finished third in the Metro and are one of the hottest sides in the league. And now for the third time in 6 seasons, we'll get to see these two sides meet in the playoffs. And now the question will be, what are some storylines to watch out for in this series? So the first one is whether or not the Islanders will be able to be less streaky. So New York finishes the year with 39 wins, but they have wins in 8 of their past 9 games. So it's a little bit concerning. 20-ish% of your wins are coming in the last 10-ish% of your year. It is something that could be off-putting, I guess, if you want to say, but the losing streaks are a little bit more worrying for me. They have 6 losing streaks of at least 3 games, and they have 2 losing streaks of at least 6 games or more. That is something you have to watch out for. This team, though, I guess if you want to have a counter argument to it, is 10-2-1 over their past 13 games. Like I mentioned earlier, when you're playing in that groove where you're able to get a lot of wins as you near the playoffs, that's going to be something that you're a little bit more happy to be streaky in that sense. And they do have 2 win streaks of at least 6 games this season, so there are points where things are going really well for them on the other end. But looking at this, you have to realize in the playoffs, you can't lose 4 games in a row or you're going home. The Islanders had a 6-game skid as recently as mid-March. So you are kind of eyeing this team and wondering whether or not they're going to be able to go out there and get things done over the course of a long postseason if things go well. Now, the second talking point is whether or not the Islanders' power play can improve. So last year, the Islanders' power play percentage was something of a talking point in the league as they finished 30th in the entire NHL. That was not great. Now, in this playoff series, we talked last season, again, about the power play having to be an X factor and getting things turned around, even though it was incredibly cold as they entered the playoffs. They were able to get on the man advantage in 5 of the 6 games against Carolina, which is something you feel really good about. Problem is, they only ended up scoring 1 goal in the entire series on the man advantage and then gave up a shorthanded goal. And we talked about before with teams that are being the underdogs. Getting on the power play is good. Scoring goals is good. But if you're not scoring goals and you're also giving up the same amount of goals as you're scoring in the series, it just offsets completely, meaning you're either going to have to win at 5-on-5, even strength, or you're going to have to be in a situation where you're needing a lot of shorthanded goals to win a series, something that is not long-term viable. Now, the good news is the power play did improve from 15.8% to 20.3% from last season to this season. However, I do want to point out that under Wall, over the past 37 games since he took over as head coach, it has dipped a little bit to 17.6%. And they are 27th in goals for per 60 over Wall's tenure. So you have to wonder a bit if things are going to stay there or they're going to regress against the Hurricanes. From what I'm seeing with this team, they aren't getting a great amount of quality chances. It seems like they're trying to get a lot of offense from the blue line, specifically the right side. You're going to have to watch out for this because if they are relying on goal scoring from, that far back, I don't imagine things are going to go well for them in the series. And you could see a replication where the man advantage proves to be a non-advantage for them. And another thing you have to look out for is the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes are really good off the PK this year with the best percentage in the entire league. And the great news for the Hurricanes is it's not just luck either. They're not a side where their goalie's been able to help them out a lot. This is a team that's just been able to limit chances across the board, and it's not just one player either. It's a lot of guys chipping in and a lot of forwards. I think sometimes you see teams that maybe have forwards that are a little bit less enthusiastic about playing defense. The Hurricanes have plenty of forwards that are going to go out there and provide a lot of help when they are shorthanded. Teuvo Teravainen is one of those examples, a guy that's come over and been a great player for them for a number of years, with some of the best numbers in the NHL in terms of PK percentage and things like that. I think one thing that's kind of interesting about him, yes, he's playing less minutes, so you could probably say, well, looking at him, he is somebody that is getting those results because of the time that he's not playing, and I could say maybe, but I will point out too, he's one of the better offensive players for them when they are shorthanded, so he's kind of dangerous in that regard. He has 4 shorthanded points on the year, and if you are the opposition in the Islanders here in this case, seeing a guy that goes out there that will probably help out his team, knowing that he could go out there and get some points for them too when you gave up a shorthanded goal in last season's series, is not going to be something that you're super thrilled about. Now, the Hurricanes do average a lot of penalty minutes and they spend a lot of time in the box this season, but I do want to add that it doesn't seem to faze them because, again, you're not first in the league for PK percentage without putting in a decent amount of effort, and the Hurricanes don't seem to mind putting in that effort and making it a little bit easier for their goalies. New York went home in 6 games last year. If they go home in that or less this season, I'd probably point to the power play as probably being a huge reason as to why. Now, the third question is, can the Hurricanes do their part? The Carolina Hurricanes, for all the work they've been able to do, where they've had great offensive numbers and great defensive numbers, had some underwhelming goalie stats through those 30 games where we talked about how they had 27 points. They were first in a ton of defensive stats across the league, but they still had one of the worst save percentages in the entire NHL. I think it was like second or third worst at that time. A lot of goalies that were struggling. It just wasn't one guy. Antti Raanta in particular seemed to have a lot of struggles in that regard, but he's not going to be starting in it for them for this series. It looks like it'll be Freddie Anderson, and Frederik Andersen has been practically unbeatable since he returned from his blood clotting issues. As he's returned, he's played 10 games, won 9 of those, had 3 shutouts, and a 951 save percentage. Like I said, with allowing 13 goals in 10 games, you're probably going to be in a good spot. The Hurricanes are being rewarded with what we've seen all year, being one of the most dominant teams in the league, finally having consistent goaltending, especially with a guy that's been with him for a while. Freddie has been a really good goalie for a very long period. However, again, injuries and just some bad postseason play especially, I think kind of drags down what his legacy will be. Not saying that he's going to be the elite of all elites when you look at the end of his career, but he has played in big moments, and right now entering the playoffs, giving up about a goal per game, not too bad. And then you have Fyodor Kochetkov, who has been a goalie we've talked about before, played in the playoffs for them. He had 4 shutouts and a 2.33 goals against average this season. And over his last 4 starts, he's looked really good with a 938 save percentage, almost said 948, and a shutout there too. So seeing 2 guys that are going to be able to be hot going into the playoffs is something you're really excited about if you're this team, knowing that you can go out there and dominate most teams, or a lot of teams in the league, and finally getting that consistent goalie play could be big for the Hurricanes, again making a deep run. And you would like to think that at this point the oddities are over for them, and it's not going to be a situation where it starts to pop back up where they outplay sides, but then they're just letting in a lot of goals. So overall, what are my thoughts on this series? This is going to be a fun one. I know that these 2 teams aren't in the greatest rivalry category in the NHL, but they've seen each other regularly enough over the past few years in the postseason, and they play in the same division. They have a long series ahead of them, probably a series that can get out of hand at times. Looking at this, you have 2 sides that got here in completely different ways. Carolina, especially over their past 50-ish games, have been able to coast, if you will. The Islanders have had to claw and fight their way the entire time. And I see 2 sides that are going to be able to look at this and say, we have to get there and do something big. If the Islanders lose in this series, it'll be another year where they haven't won a postseason series since 2021. For the Hurricanes, it'll be the first time since 2020. So for this series, I will be picking the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm going to make it in 6 games. This Islander side is hot as of late, but the Hurricanes have been hot in this regard too, winning 5 of their last 6 games to close out the year. Just a side that's been able to go on a tear. They brought in Jake Gensel, a big name. They brought in some other pieces as well. And the Hurricanes are better offensively, they're better defensively. The goalie situation when it's on is really good. Now I will say that the situation in net for the Islanders probably a little bit better with Semyon Varlamov playing hot as of late. And then you have Ilya Sorokin, who is a big name goalie in the entire NHL. But I have to go back to, you got Rod Brind'Amour instead of Wall that is going to be behind the bench. He's got a lot of experience. We've seen what they've been able to do. The Hurricanes have been able to get the better of the Islanders in recent years in the playoffs. I expect that trend to continue as they're just a class above the Islanders at the moment. But we're going to see, what are your thoughts on this playoff series? Who do you think will win and in how many games? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, we're close to 700, and then check out the playlist at the end of this video as I'll be doing other playoff previews, probably other one a day to see if it does well, and then if it doesn't do well, put out the rest tomorrow. Anyway, everybody, please make sure to stay safe, have a great night, and you go love hockey already. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.